SpaceX's third rocket just failed. Again, they had money for one more. And every person standing on Omelek Island knew, if the next one fails, SpaceX is dead, and the man who bet $100 million of his own money to put humans on Mars will go broke. But to understand how Elon Musk ended up nearly bankrupt on a remote Pacific island, you have to go back 7 years, to a conference room in Moscow, and a spit. 2001. Musk is 30 years old. He's the largest shareholder in PayPal, a company that will sell for $1.5 billion the following year, netting him roughly $175 million before taxes. But he's already spending his time reading old NASA budget documents and getting angry. The conclusion he reaches: the launch industry is broken and nobody is fixing it. A single Delta IV Heavy launch, the most powerful US rocket at the time, was projected to cost upwards of $350 million. The US launch industry was dominated by two giants, Boeing and Lockheed Martin, operating largely on cost-plus government contracts where companies are literally paid more for spending more. So he assembles a brain trust that includes Jim Cantrell, a space consultant with Soviet-era contacts, and his college friend Adeo Ressi, and they go to Moscow shopping for something cheaper.
So I ended up going to Russia 3 times to try to buy the biggest ICBM in the Russian nuclear fleet.
Musk was trying to buy an intercontinental ballistic missile called the Dnieper. The pitch: put a greenhouse on the rocket, land it on Mars, and beam back the pictures. October 2001, 1 month after September 11th, Moscow, a conference room that smells like cigarette smoke and cold indifference. Musk is sitting across from executives at Kosmotras, the Russian company that brokers old Soviet ICBMs converted into satellite launchers. The Russians bring out a bottle of vodka. They quote Musk an egregious $8 million per missile. For rockets that cost a fraction of that to produce, they were saying without saying it, you are a tourist, an amateur, you're an internet kid with a checkbook, and this club is not for you.
I really honestly believe that they just found this whole thing ridiculous. As I said, we were talking about building rockets ourselves. Here's a man coming in and saying he wants to spend all this money of his own to send a plant to Mars, which made no sense to the Russians. And I just think it was overwhelming for the guy. That was the sense I got. And he did. As we were explaining it to him, he spit on our shoes. And Elon turned to me and said, "I think you spit on me." And I said, "Yeah, I think that's a sign of disrespect." So that was when the meeting was pretty much over at that point. So yeah, it's a true story.
Musk left Moscow without a deal. He went back. The price went up, not down. The Russians thought the whole thing was a joke. On the flight home from that final trip, Musk opened his laptop and pulled up a spreadsheet. Cantrell watched him punch numbers. Aluminum, carbon fiber, kerosene, liquid oxygen. Row by row, Musk was modeling the raw material cost of building a rocket from scratch. His conclusion? Raw materials were roughly 2 to 3% of what a launch actually costs. The rest was markup, bureaucracy, and legacy contracts. Musk turned to his companions and said, "Hey guys, I think we can build this rocket ourselves." They thought he was insane. March 2002. SpaceX is incorporated. Musk has now read countless books on rocket building. He has a thesis, a spreadsheet, and a warehouse. He does not have a rocket engine. He does not have a launch site. He does not have a single employee who has ever led the construction of a full orbital rocket. But he knows he can figure it out. What he needs first is someone who can actually build the thing. By 2002, Tom Mueller is a propulsion engineer at TRW, a tiny cog in a huge wheel. His engine designs take years to crawl through bureaucratic approval. So, what does Mueller do after work? He goes home to the San Fernando Valley and builds rocket engines in his backyard. Not toys, actual liquid fuel rocket engines. TRW gave his obsession a job. The garage gave it a life. Musk meets Mueller at a warehouse in Los Angeles, where a local amateur rocketry club gathered. Mueller is there with the engine he built in his garage. They talk for hours. Mueller wasn't ready to leave his stable TRW job and pension. To close the deal, Musk put 2 years of Mueller's salary into a private escrow account, guaranteeing Mueller would be paid even if SpaceX failed.
It was a very difficult decision, but it was that day. And I went home and talked to my ex-wife and said, man, this is really cool. I said, I think he's got great ideas, and I think he's got, PayPal is about ready, or just went public. I think he's got the capital. And she said, she goes, if you don't do this, you always kick yourself. I go, yeah, I have to do this. And I had a great career path at TRW. Things were going great there. So it was like, to walk away from a sure thing, was a hard decision. But I had to do it, and it's the best decision of my life.
Musk didn't post job listings. He hunted. He read technical papers, traced bylines, followed referrals, and called people at home. The pitch was always some version of the same thing. I'm building a rocket company from scratch. I need people who are the best at what they do. Most people said no, politely or with thinly veiled concern for his sanity. The ones who said yes were willing to bet their careers on a company with no engine, no launch site, and no flight history. So, SpaceX got the talent. Now it needed a place to build.
In 2002, as you can see, I'm a dancing machine.
Their first factory is a former Northrop Grumman plant in Hawthorne, California, a massive building once used to manufacture fuselage sections for the Boeing 747. It's now empty. Mueller's team takes the Merlin engine from design to first test fire in roughly 18 months, a timeline that would be unheard of at Lockheed or Boeing. The traditional aerospace model subcontracts each piece to a different company. Musk goes the opposite direction. SpaceX builds nearly everything in-house.
SpaceX was the first company that I know of that basically did the whole launch vehicle and owned the whole thing. Every other launch vehicle was built from, we bought an engine from these guys, we bought structure from these guys. Typically the structure guy would be the integrator, bought the engines, bought the avionics, bought the fairing. And it was just done by spec, very slowly, a lot of lawyers involved. And as the design evolved, it was, even if things were wrong, it just got built that way. So they were never optimized. We optimized everything.
Now the company has a rocket taking shape on the factory floor. It needs someone who can sell it. Not to engineers or space enthusiasts, but to NASA procurement offices and Pentagon briefing rooms. Musk speaks in first principles and barely veiled contempt for the people he's trying to sell to. Enter Gwynne Shotwell. She spent over a decade at the Aerospace Corporation on military satellite programs. She was fluent in exactly that language. Analytical and direct, she knew how to read a room. Musk offers her the VP of Business Development role. She nearly says no. So far, SpaceX is just a warehouse full of sheet metal and optimism. But the hardware and the determination she sees on her first visit to the factory does it.
He asked on the flight down there, should we, you want to do this? And I loved my job at the time, so my gut initially for a nanosecond was, no, I really like my job. Maybe I'm not finished with that yet. And then I said, no, of course. Yes, I want to do that.
Shotwell joins as employee 11. She's already on the phone. She calls satellite companies and government agencies with a pitch that sounds like a typo. We'll launch your payload for $6.7 million. For a small satellite, the only other option was riding as a secondary payload on a $60 to $100 million rocket. SpaceX was building a dedicated ride for payloads that had nowhere else to go. People think it's a scam. Musk puts the price on the front page of SpaceX.com. Almost none of his major competitors publish pricing. The meetings Shotwell gets go the same way every time. Polite interest, then a slow retreat. The problem is credibility. They're selling a rocket that does not exist yet. But by late 2005, Falcon 1 is nearly ready for its first launch attempt, and they need a launch site. Musk tries to lease launch pad SLC-3W at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. Boeing and Lockheed are merging into what would become United Launch Alliance, and the Air Force isn't about to let an unproven experimental rocket explode next to a classified NRO satellite. Their message to SpaceX is clear: you can launch, but only after our payload is safely in orbit. When is that? They won't say. So Musk waits and waits. Millions of dollars invested in Vandenberg facilities the company will never use. No timeline, no reimbursement. Meanwhile, when Boeing or Lockheed gets delayed on a national security launch, those delays get billed to the government at cost plus. So Musk finds his only other option on Earth, literally, Kwajalein Atoll, specifically Omelek Island, a 12-acre coral rock in the Marshall Islands, 2,500 miles southwest of Hawaii. The US Army runs a missile test range there, and SpaceX is able to negotiate access. No hotels, dial-up internet, equatorial heat that never breaks, salt air that corrodes everything it touches. Engineers sleep in repurposed shipping containers. They don't know it yet, but they will spend 1,200 days there. Fall 2005. Supplies usually arrive by boat, sporadically. But one day, the expected shipment of food, beer, and cigarettes doesn't show up. Ed Thomas, one of the SpaceX technicians, recounts, "We were just wild animals on the island, waiting for food. Hungry, exhausted, and fresh off a scolding from Hawthorne about paperwork, the engineers planted their feet. The Omelek crew went on strike. No more work until things changed. Musk didn't fire them. He listened. An army helicopter soon thumped in with trays of chicken wings and cartons of cigarettes, an emergency resupply that broke the standoff. Omelek was still harsh, hot, and corrosive, but conditions improved. Better logistics, more open channels. The engineers stayed. The first launch attempt is scrubbed on December 19, 2005. With a damaged rocket and Christmas 6 days away, the team packs up and flies home. They'd be back in 3 months. March 24, 2006. Flight 1 of Falcon 1, nearly 4 years of work. A few dozen engineers sweating it out on a coral island. And 25 seconds after liftoff, the rocket is on fire. Less than a minute. That's how long SpaceX's first rocket lasted. A small aluminum connector eaten away by salty ocean air, a concern from the very beginning, cracked and failed. Rocket fuel leaked out and the Merlin engine caught fire. The vehicle pitched over, impacted a reef near the launch pad, and destroyed its payload, FalconSat 2, a satellite built by cadets at the US Air Force Academy, funded by DARPA. That night, Musk types a memo to the team. SpaceX is in this for the long haul, and come hell or high water, we're going to make it work. Flight 2, March 21st, 2007. Better, much better. The first stage performs well and separates from the second stage, but late in the second stage burn, the rocket begins to roll. Oscillations cause the liquid oxygen propellant to slosh around in the tank, starving the engine of fuel and forcing an early shutdown before reaching orbit. Flight 3, August 2nd, 2008. Another 17 months of work. The rocket looks perfect. First stage burn is nominal. Stage separation occurs. And then between flights, SpaceX had upgraded the Merlin engine to the regeneratively cooled Merlin 1C, a major performance improvement led by Tom Mueller's propulsion team. But the new engine takes slightly longer to wind down after cutoff, just a couple of extra seconds of residual thrust, enough to push the empty first stage back up into the separating second stage. The first stage slams back into the second stage seconds after separation. Both stages are pulverized. The team is still picking up the debris when Musk gets on the phone. He tells the team on Omelek they're launching again. They will take the spare Falcon 1, backup components scattered across the island, and assemble a flight-ready rocket right there. Only the minimum will be flown from Hawthorne. Build it, fix it, fly it. But the desperate sprint nearly dies on day one, with SpaceX down to its last rocket and facing potential failure. During transport of Flight 4's first stage to Kwajalein aboard a chartered C-17 Globemaster III, the structure begins to implode mid-flight, with audible popping noises as the plane changes altitude. Zach Dunn, a young propulsion engineer responsible for the Falcon 1 first stage, crawls headfirst into the dark, cramped interstage at altitude. He uses a wrench to manually open a vent and equalize the pressure. His colleague Mike Sheehan holds his ankles in case the structure gives way, and the vehicle survives. Meanwhile, back in Hawthorne, the financial picture is becoming grim. The fourth launch needs to work, or it'll be the last, but Musk is undeterred.
When you had that third failure in a row, did you think, I need to pack this in?
Never.
Why not?
I don't ever give up. I mean, I'd have to be dead or completely incapacitated.
September 28, 2008. Kwajalein Atoll. The sky over Omelek is clear. The fourth and final Falcon 1 sits on the pad. If it fails, there is no Flight 5. Musk is in a conference room in Hawthorne, California, watching on a webcast the launch that will determine whether he is a visionary or an eternal cautionary tale.
5, 2, 1, 0.
We're at stage
We have
one.
liftoff indication. We have liftoff. SpaceX Falcon 1 launch vehicle. Falcon has cleared the
Second stage propulsion performance is nominal.
9 minutes 30 seconds.
Second stage approaching SECO. SECO confirmed.
SpaceX just made history. But the financial situation is getting desperate. SpaceX is down to weeks of operating cash. Tesla is in a cash crisis of its own, scrambling to avoid missing payments and payroll. Musk needs a miracle. He gets a phone call. Fall 2008. Lehman Brothers is dead. Credit markets are frozen.
I invested all the money I had. Literally, I had to borrow money from friends to pay the rent in 2008.
Almost nobody on Earth is writing checks. For Elon Musk, bankruptcy is getting closer and closer. The contract that's about to save SpaceX didn't fall from the sky. Musk built that bridge 4 years before, and he built it by picking a fight that everyone in the room told him was unwinnable. In 2004, NASA handed a contract worth over $200 million to Kistler Aerospace, an already bankrupt rocket company, without competitive bidding. Every advisor Musk had told him the same thing. Don't challenge it. You'll probably lose. And you'll infuriate NASA, the only customer you cannot afford to. But Musk insists, quote, it seems like right is on our side here. It seems like this should go out for competition. And if we don't fight this, then I think we're doomed. End quote. So he protested to the Government Accountability Office, and he won. NASA pulled the Kistler Award and opened the competition, paving the way for COTS, Commercial Orbital Transportation Services, NASA's push to hand ISS resupply to private companies. Back to 2008. Gwynne Shotwell is working every NASA connection she has. SpaceX is weeks from running out of money. The NASA administrator is Mike Griffin, a heavyweight aerospace engineer who also traveled to Moscow with Musk back in 2002. Griffin was running a $500 million gamble to shift routine ISS resupply to the private sector, freeing NASA to focus on deep space exploration, and SpaceX's Flight 4 had just proved they could reach orbit. December 23, 2008, Monday morning, Musk's phone rings.
NASA called and told us that we'd won a $1.5 billion contract. And I couldn't even hold the phone. It's like, I just blurted out, I love you guys.
2 days later, December 24th, Christmas Eve, Tesla closes an emergency financing round. About 6 months of runway. Both companies, both weeks from collapse, saved within 48 hours of each other. In the years that followed, SpaceX didn't just reach orbit. They started landing rockets. Outside of the space shuttle program, for 60 years, every rocket that went up came down in pieces, burned up, scattered in the ocean, written off as a huge and unavoidable expense. And since SpaceX first announced they'd work on reusable rockets, the entire industry had kept laughing. On December 21st, 2015, a Falcon 9 booster landed gently at Cape Canaveral after delivering 11 satellites to orbit. By 2024, they'd done it over 300 times, reusing the same boosters again and again. The cost per kilogram to orbit had dropped more than 90% from the Delta IV era Musk had raged against in 2001. Then came Starship, the most powerful rocket ever built. In late 2024, SpaceX caught its Super Heavy booster back at the launch tower with a pair of mechanical arms, just grabbed it out of the sky. NASA's Commercial Crew Program now sends American astronauts to the ISS on Crew Dragon capsules. Starlink beams high-speed internet to over 100 countries from a growing constellation of over 6,000 satellites. SpaceX is a man-made miracle, and all of it traces back to 1,200 days of hell on a coral island in the middle of nowhere.